I went to the I Am tour. That's the tour that I got to sing to Beyonce at. But I think the most inspiring person in the book was Mathew Knowles. If Beyonce, one of the biggest stars in the world, her own mother is not even being respected when she goes to the doctors or when she's in the hospital, what's happening with so many other black women when they go to the hospital? And then Tina and Mathew, man, that's a whole damn Tyler Perry series, them two. Yeah, what up? It's your boy Jamai. Welcome to the Manifest and Stardom vlog, where I give you insight on my life, my journey to being the biggest star in the world. And you know what's crazy is one of the main things I wanted to do with this channel that I toyed with before I decided to do a Manifest and Stardom vlog was a book club. I love to read. I love books, and books have really changed my life. So this will be like my first book review. I did a movie review, but I'm gonna do a book review. And the first book that I'm going to review is Tina Knowles' Matriarch. Tina Knowles' Matriarch is like, a lot of people probably wouldn't think I would read it, but if you know me, you know how much I love Beyonce, you know how much I followed her career, and then naturally Tina Knowles is all of our moms, so you know, naturally I like Ms. Tina. I really do like Ms. Tina, and as much as we know about Beyonce and we love Beyonce, we have really been mothered by Ms. Tina, for real, because she like everybody mom. I'm a millennial, so Beyonce's ascension has been all through my childhood and adulthood. So like, you kind of naturally gravitate to Ms. Tina. And so it's a really cool book. So I'll just give some little things that I jotted down of like that stood out to me about this book, because I think it was very interesting for her to share her story, and the way that the family is so private, for her to still share things that are very personal, but do it in the most classy way. And it also shows what the family's bond really is, because she kind of told the truth about a lot of different things, and I think it shined light on different aspects of the family dynamic that, had they not been close, would have been uncomfortable or disrespectful to share. So this is my book review for Tina Knowles' Matriarch. We love you, Ms. Tina. So the foreword starts with, she calls her daughters Kelly, Angie, Beyonce, which is her niece, Beyonce obviously, and Solange. And so that's who the foreword is from. And so the first thing that stood out to me about the foreword was that, in order, it was Kelly was first, then it was Angie, then it was Beyonce, and then it was Solange. And the thing that stood out to me was how deep their voices are. When you really think about it, so Kelly's voice was like regular, right? Then Angie, we actually never really heard Angie talk. Like, I know she's an actor on a Tyler Perry show, but I never watched the show that she's on. Bro, I was like, oh, Angie got a little raspy voice. Then Beyonce spoke, and I'm like, all right, B, her voice deep as hell, bro. And when Solange sound like me. Like, I couldn't believe how deep their voices were. Like, I knew Beyonce's voice got deeper over the years, and I knew she had like that southern drawl, that lower monotone voice. But damn it, I ain't know Solange's voice I ain't know Solange was a baritone. God damn. So that was funny. I mean, of course it was. And I don't mean that in no disrespectful way. You know, I love them. But that was really the first thing that stuck out to me. Like, damn, Beyonce must have just woke up. And then Solange, I'm like, bro, deep ass voice. So that was something that stood out to me. But they gave their well wishes, and Beyonce talked about how when she heard the light bulb go off, when Beyonce was reading something, and she was reading it to her mom, and she was talking about how something about your children's legacy and leaving stories for your children, and the light bulb kind of went off for Tina. And so so the foreword was cool. I'm not going to go throughout every part of the book, but one of the first things that stood out to me that I thought was amazing was, and I kind of started writing my notes later in my listening to the book, but one thing that stood out to me was that at one point in the group, Kelly started living with the Knowles family. And so Kelly didn't have a father. Her mom, worked or whatever. And so Tina found herself kind of overcompensating, and they kind of did everything to make Kelly feel at home. And it was one part where Beyonce, and I'm assuming they probably like 9 or 10 or 11 at this time, Beyonce expressed to Ms. Tina that she didn't like Kelly calling Mathew dad. And to me, that stood out to me because, one, we always know that like there's never ever been a beef between Kelly and Beyonce. Like, we've never heard of a beef. They never slighted each other. They never threw shade to each other. But this really humanizes Beyonce because, one, it shows how phenomenal of a father Mathew was, how much Beyonce loved her dad, but then also it shows that like Beyonce was human too. Beyonce at one point was like, yo, like, that's my dad. Like, you here, you in the group and all, but nigga, why you calling my dad dad? Like, and I thought that was like, that showed, in a few ways, it showed the nuance of their relationship. And it also showed how Beyonce is most of the time really reserved, because what Tina wrote in that part of the book was she was excited that Beyonce spoke up for herself and expressed herself, because Beyonce typically is more reserved. She doesn't really let you know all of her feelings, or she's not very communicative when it comes to her emotions. And that's what we know of Beyonce too. We know Beyonce to be reserved, well-mannered, controlling her emotions, always even keel, always cool, smooth, calm, collected. And so it goes to show you that, like, in my opinion, the Beyonce that we know is really not an act. That she is not what's the word I'm looking for? She's not what's the word I'm looking for with like conflict? Like, she's not confrontational. She likes to keep the peace. She be laid back. She don't let a lot of things get under her skin. And from like as a fan or from the public to see that that's really how she is. Obviously, all these years we never seen Beyonce lash out, but to see how she is over the years, and then to hear Ms. Tina talk about how she was excited that Beyonce expressed herself to her own mom, I think that just was really confirming, like, damn, Beyonce really be chilling. And then too, like, we all know Destiny's Child used to be like, we don't fight over this, we don't do that. But here in this story, it kind of humanized the experience of what a 12-year-old or 11-year-old girl might feel. Damn, these mosquitoes trying to get me. What a 12-year-old or 11-year-old girl might feel based off of, her best friend living with them at home, but that ain't her sister, that's her friend. So her calling her dad, I just thought that was a very interesting point, and it like enlightens, it like gave so much context to the temperament of their family at that point of their life. Contrary to what maybe some other people feel reading the book, but I think the most inspiring person for me in the book was Mathew Knowles, man. I think so much credit is owed to that man for Beyonce's success and the family's success. I think Ms. Tina was very candid. She was very honest. And I think she was fair. I think she was so fair. She was so truthful about, how terrible of a husband he was, but how great of a man he was. She was so honest about how he was a phenomenal father, but a terrible husband, but still a great person, and always protected her. And so I think that shows, like, that's us as humans. Like, we're very complex creatures, you know what I'm saying? And like, I was just so inspired by Mathew Knowles, being told about Mathew from somebody that, how can I say this? Being told about Mathew from somebody that has every right to say only negative things about him. I think she spoke very fairly of him, and it made me see just how exceptional of a businessman and of a person he is. I grew to really like Mathew Knowles in this book, believe it or not. And part of the reason is because, one, Beyonce and Mathew are maniacs. Like, they're both infused each other. Like Mathew challenged Beyonce, but Beyonce was always up for the challenge. They talk about how in the group when Mathew Knowles would be hard on the group and giving critiques, and at the end of it, they would say he always be like, especially you, Beyonce. Like, all throughout Beyonce's career, Destiny Child's career, everybody always said like, Mathew his favoritism to Beyonce and all that. But Tina was very adamant about expressing how he was more hard on Beyonce than any other members, and Beyonce was always willing to accept the challenge. I think even Beyonce talked about how she worked so hard for her dad's approval, and he wouldn't give it to her, often. And so I think that showed and that paid off in so many ways. If you really think about how hard Beyonce works and how focused she is and how, her business acumen, like, you can't sit here and say that, like, that just came out of anywhere, like, out of nowhere. You know what I'm saying? I see myself in Mathew because of how much of a risk taker he was. He took risk after risk after risk and failed and failed and failed. One of the times they separated was because, Tina and Mathew had a magazine, a hair magazine, and they, shipped it across the country, and they, shopped it to all of the hair shows and stuff throughout the country. And, he went, and she was like, it had began to be too expensive to keep printing. And so, he went behind her and spent like, however many thousands of dollars to do another print, and it flopped. And Ms. Tina was devastated. She, that was a part of her separation, whatever, one of their many separations. And it just spoke to how much of he was willing to always take the risk. He was willing to take risk after risk after risk. And she said, like, if Mathew had $1,000, he would spend $800 on an investment or an idea. And that's me. And I think the reason that that's so inspiring to me is because I'm at that stage in my career where I'm spending. Sorry if I'm scratching on, because the mosquitoes tearing my ass up. I'm at the stage in my career where I'm taking all those risks, and I'm not necessarily reaping the benefits of the risk. I'm failing at a lot of my risks that I'm taking right now. But I think hearing about Mathew, his optimism, his work ethic, his like, I got another idea, and jumping head first, that ability, that passion, it reminds me of myself. And I think to hear a story of it from somebody that shit eventually worked out is like very inspiring for me, because that's kind of where I feel like I'm at in my career. It's just like I'm always taking a risk. I'm always trying an idea. I'm always moving forward in the direction of trying to make my dreams a reality. And so to see that Mathew was always with it, it kind of gives me some comfort and some inspiration to be like, that's what's got to be done. I mean, Mathew, he thought 100 times that one time was the time. That one idea was the idea. And I'm inspired because he kept going, and one of them times he was right. You know what I'm saying? But he just kept going. I think that's really inspiring for me, because when everybody telling you no, when so many people don't believe in you, you got to hold on to some inspiration from people that did what you're trying to do, or that's where you want to be, or, and that's what's so inspiring for me, like from a business perspective when it comes to Mathew Knowles. And say what you want, man, at the end of the day, he was a father, you know what I'm saying? He made some mistakes, but I think the mistakes are what make people, you know what I'm saying? The mistakes are what shows the contrast of the good things about them. I'm not condoning the infidelity or all those other things. I'm just saying that, like, it showed the actual person. Because my thing is, if Tina Knowles is willing to say that he would cheat on her time and time and time again, that he would go have a baby on her, that he would do all these different things, then why would the good things she say not be true? And I think when you put all of that together, it makes up the whole person. A lot of times we hear about great people and inspiring people. We only hear the great things about their personality. We only hear the good, inspiring things about, their greatness. But we rarely hear about their proclivities or their weaknesses or their shortcomings. And I think that's what attracts me to Mathew Knowles as a character in her story. I was immensely pleasantly surprised. If it's another person that I grew to love in this book, it's motherfucking Solange. Man, Solange, this book, bro, Solange. It's funny because, like I said before, a lot of what we know from a public standpoint aligned with what she talks about in this book. How Solange is very outspoken. She's always been outspoken. She's always marched to the beat of her own drum. And I think, even when it comes to Solange fitting in with her family, Tina Knowles is always with it. Mathew was always with it. Tina talked about how Solange thrived off of being home, having dinner at 6 o'clock every day, consistency, being attending school regularly on the day, not missing a day of school. Solange thrived off of that, whereas though Beyonce was focused on music, Tina and Mathew was focused on, they were business people and entrepreneurs, so they was focused on hustling and doing whatever they can do to make Destiny's Child work. But Solange wasn't that kid. Solange was like, I like apples today, I like oranges tomorrow, I want to try this now, I want to try that now, I want to be free, I don't want to do. So I think the dichotomy between the two is like kind of funny, and just like none of the shit that impressed everybody never impressed Solange. And I think you still see that to this day. You can still see how that thread still is consistent. Solange be out the mix. She don't be in a hoopla. She, you know what I'm saying? She's just a different person. She's her own person. But an artist, at the core of everything she is, she's an artist. I really like Solange from this book as well. She talked about times where Destiny's Child would be on tour, and Tina Knowles and Mathew, they would be in London, and Solange would be home, at school, going to school regularly on a daily basis, because she wasn't impressed by all the different things that might impress another, young kid or whatever. She wanted to be home, she wanted to be at school. And so I think that shows like the beauty of like their parenting, their flexibility, and just like giving each child what each child needs. So like that was cool. Another interesting thing was, I had no idea that Tamar, Vincent Hubert, Tamar's ex-husband, I had no idea he wrote No No No. I had no idea. That was a cool fact that I had no idea. To focus back on, Beyonce truly being a leader in every way. She talked about how, Tina being their stylist, they would only have like each fashion house would only have like one or two looks for like a artist look. They like a fashion line might have a line, but then they'll have like one or two pieces that are for artists or whatever. And so because Destiny's Child was like 4 members, this fashion house would only have 1 or 2 looks. Another fashion house would have like 1 look, and Ms.Tina innovated and like went against the rules and put looks together and mixed this designer with that designer, which wasn't something that was frowned upon. But she talked about how, they might send 2 left shoes, or they might send pants that's too short or too small, or something that's not right. And Beyonce as the leader will always be the one to take the 2 left shoes, or be the one that takes, the clothing item that doesn't quite work with everything. Beyonce would always be the leader and just take one for the team. She posing on red carpets with 2 left shoes and shit. And like, we all know that's why Beyonce is who she is. But like, I think what's most interesting about Beyonce is we all see her greatness, and we all see like obviously she works hard and makes a lot of sacrifices, but we really don't know, as much as we know she works hard, we really don't know how hard she really works and how hard she has worked. I think about like, just hear me out. I think about how many songs Beyonce's recorded that we've never even heard. You know what I'm saying? But those thousands of songs that she recorded contributed to the greatness that we have heard. But nobody thinks about the every album she's doing 200 songs, or nobody thinks about the years of dance practice, not just like for a tour, or like the years, like the many sacrifices. Like as a kid, I heard LaToya Luckett talking about how they went to an amusement park and they was finally happy that they could be on roller coasters. Beyonce sitting in a hot ass car writing songs while all other group members is on the roller coaster, just sitting in the car writing songs. Like, those are the little sacrifices that you'll never get real notoriety for, but you get all the notoriety in the world for it. You know what I'm saying? And so Tina like really talked about that, how Beyonce's always been a leader. She always shined bright as a star, but she always was willing to take it on the chin. And what leaders do, leaders take the blame for everything. Leaders stand in the back when they need to. That's what leaders do. So I ain't gonna hold you. I got a little frog in my throat. Listening to how Tina found out that Uncle Johnny was in the song "Break My Soul." And I think the whole story of Uncle Johnny, it just gave so much more enlightenment of who Ms. Tina is. Talked about just how close they were, their relationship, and then like just how families be. Like families, like Johnny really her nephew, but they the same age. You know what I'm saying? That's how families be. Like we don't never really hear about that in like mainstream, where like uncles and nephews or aunts and nieces or aunts and nephews be the same age, because the grandparents be having kids around the same time that their oldest kid be having kids. And so I love to hear about the dynamic of her family with all her siblings and the different ages and things like that. So just to hear how Johnny was more like a brother and her sister Selena was more like a second mother, I thought was a cool, interesting dynamic, because they were really, really, really close, and that was her nephew. You know what I mean? I think she handled the Destiny's Child breakup really, really well. She didn't really speak too negatively about anybody. Probably Mathew, she probably spoke the most negatively about. She didn't really give no details about the breakup of Destiny's Child, and I think that goes to show you that like she respects the fact that it's not her place. Like that's not her story to tell. And though I wanted to get of course we kind of heard what happened. I read the Becoming Beyonce book a few years ago, and they talked about all the different nuances with the reason they broke up, even the breakup before Mathew got into the group. The group was created by this person named Miss Ann or something like that, and how Miss Ann passed away, and the brothers or the sons of Miss Ann kind of accused them of like kind of taking ownership of the group or something like that. They went through some kind of civil situation, but Miss Tina didn't, she didn't dive into any of that. And I think some things, in order to be done in a classy way, some things can't be spoken on, and I think she left the whole Latavia beef. She just was kind of like, things didn't work out and they needed new members, and she focused on their process to getting new members. I think that was, as much as I would have liked for her to talk about that more, I think she handled it in a way that is consistent with why we love her so much, with grace and class and respect. And I think that's what's up, you know what I'm saying? Because that's not really her story to tell. But one thing that I was interested about was throughout Destiny's Child's career, one of the other moms, Latavia's mom, was a chaperone. And Ms. Tina talked about how her and Latavia's mom would be lugging bags, and they would be taking turns chaperoning so that Latavia's mom could be with her husband sometimes. And these other moms were everybody had a role to play and were very involved. And so I just wondered, like, how did that relationship affect, like, I know everybody gonna stand for their kids, but how did the relationship from Tina and Mathew with Latavia's mom, like, how was that? I'm sure maybe it was, sorry I keep scratching because the mosquito's kicking me, but I'm sure that was strenuous, or maybe it just ended, or maybe it was amicable. I don't know, but I was interested, like how does that work? Like how y'all just cold turkey? I know these girls, these teenagers is beefing, but y'all the adults, like, you know what I'm saying? How did that situation work? Because Latavia's mom was their day-to-day chaperone. So Mathew was their manager, Tina was their stylist, but Tina was also running her hair salon, and then Latavia's mom was their day-to-day chaperone. So when a group break up and Latoya and Latavia is not in a group, how's the dynamic between the parents? Like, like, did they have a beef too? Did they argue? Did they just, so I was just curious, like, how that kind of went too. I love to hear the story about Tina taking Beyonce to, they had went to her house in Galveston, and they actually went to like Ross and Walgreens, and they went to somewhere called Louis B, some restaurant, and all these places in Galveston that they, frequented when Solange and Beyonce was kids or whatever. So like that was cool to think that, like, damn, they was no security, just riding around Galveston, just at Ross and Walgreens, and trying to get their mojo back. Because I think at that time Tina was going through some things or whatever. But that was cool. That was a cool little piece to the book that I really enjoy reading. Like, what the fuck is Beyonce doing in Ross? And then Tina and Mathew, man, that's a whole damn Tyler Perry series, them two. Them back and forth, just the back and forth. I think Tina represents so many women. She represents so many people that, like, it's not easy to just stop dealing with somebody. It's not easy to stop a relationship with somebody who is not all a terrible person. Of course, she definitely should have left him. It was definitely, he was out of pocket. But I think she was very honest and candid about the good things about him and what reasons women stay, or people stay in relationships a lot of time, when you genuinely love somebody, mixed with her trauma of, her not feeling good enough about herself through her childhood. And she talked about all those things in the book. One part, All Access, the TV network, or the TV show All Access Hollywood, I think it was, they did an interview for Beyonce, with Beyonce on her I Am tour. And I remember watching this interview in real time, because the interviewer asked Beyonce about her parents, and she went on this spill about how she really loves her mom, and she got emotional, and he was like, "You really love your mom?" And she's crying. And I'm like, that was interesting, because that was like 2009 I Am tour. And then she kind of Tina talked about that interview in the book, about how, she had been going through all this stuff with Mathew, the back and forth, currently with the I Am tour. Beyonce wasn't really in a good space with Mathew, and neither was Tina. So, like, in the midst of all of that, Mathew begging, trying to get her back, but they just going through all these different ups and downs in their relationship. And I think to hear about Tina talk about something that I remember watching in real time, thinking like, damn, Beyonce really was fucked up over, how her mom was being treated or whatever. So that was interesting to kind of plug that, because I remember watching that interview. And it wasn't Beyonce's normal demeanor. And in the book, Tina talked about how the night before that interview, Mathew had just admitted that, he had another affair, and he was begging and pleading for Tina to take him back and all this other stuff. But like this in the middle of, or at the beginning, the throes of Beyonce's world tour, they all on tour, and just like having your mom have to go through all this stress, dealing with your dad, because your dad cheating on your mom, he basically breaking your heart too. So like, just think of all the emotional turmoil that she had been going through, but we would have never known. I went to the I Am tour. That's the tour that I got to sing to Beyonce at. And I was, You know, it's just so profoundly inspiring to see the level of perseverance and focus that Beyonce has always exhibited to give us a great show and just be one of our favorite artists. I think about how empaths get the shit into the stick, because at the end of the day, Tina Knowles was an empath. She loved Mathew, and she truly saw the good in him, and just her empathetic behavior throughout the book just shows that, like, empaths, we typically get the shit into the stick in a lot of scenarios, because we usually put other people ahead of ourselves. You know what I'm saying? It's really hard for us to be selfish and choose ourselves over other people. So, you know, it kind of sucked for Tina all them years, but, you know, I think too, one of the cool things is you just got to see how Beyonce living a life that she lives. You know, Tina and Mathew taught her so many things, but Beyonce was able to teach her mom so many things because of the life that Beyonce got to live, as opposed to the life that Tina got to live. And so she talks about how Beyonce taught Tina how to take compliments. You know, if you look at any old videos or any like paparazzi or behind the scene footage of Beyonce, Tina Knowles is back there somewhere with all black on. You know, she talked about how she would intentionally try to hide from the camera, hide from the spotlight, and just do whatever she could to, you know, be out of the way, wear all black, and just kind of disappear. And she said a part of that was from her childhood, you know, taking shame, using shame as humility, like, you know. And I can relate to that. Like, I can relate to that, like, coming up being a person that has always been like the commander of attention when I walk in the room. I've always been, you know, challenged with being labeled as conceited or self-centered or selfish or need to be center of attention. So I adopted, especially as an empath, I adopted the behavior of watering myself down, kind of shunning away, pulling away, because I always know I'm the center of attention in any room that I go into. So let me kind of fall back so that somebody else that perhaps might want to be the center of attention, they can be that. And that's never a good thing to do. That's never a great way to be. And because you're an empath, you typically are uncomfortable when other people are uncomfortable, because you can feel it. And so because you can feel it, you try to do things to make other people feel comfortable in a room. And a lot of times, it don't no matter what the hell you do, they're going to be uncomfortable because they're intimidated by your energy, by your vibe. And so I connected with that when she talked about that, how Beyonce taught her how to take compliments, how to not always downplay a compliment, instead just say thank you when somebody compliments you or compliments your outfit or, you know, whatever. So for Beyonce to have always been so pretty, so bad, so fine, so talented, and so the center of attention, I always wonder how she dealt with, I mean, you know, Beyonce always kind of does give off shy sometimes, but I always wondered if she really struggled with not delivering or not exuding that courage or that energy, because she's always been the light-skinned girl, always been the pretty girl, the girl with long hair, the lead singer, the manager's daughter, the this, the that. Like, she always been hated on her whole life. So, like, I wonder how she, like, overcame that, like, overcame making other people uncomfortable by her just being great. You know what I mean? Because she's always seemed to have exuded confidence on stage and then humility in person. But confident humility, not like a shy, you know, coy type of humility, but like a confident humbleness about her that she's always had. You know what I'm saying? I was like, damn, I remind myself of a 70-year-old woman. Because, you know, she talked about how she decided, you know, when she turned 70 that she was going to call all her daughters and tell them, like, I'm in my selfish era. I love y'all if y'all need me. y'all know I'm here, but I'm not about to be up under y'all after this divorce, da 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 da, whatever. And I'm like, damn, that remind me of myself, because that's kind of where I feel like I am in this space right now. Because sorry, man, these mosquitoes are going crazy. The reality is, man, as an empath, you definitely worry about not being there for the people that you love, but a lot of times that narrative is created in your head that it's not a bad thing. Like, we created from our childhood trauma that focusing on you and prioritizing yourself is a bad thing. Me being an only child, my mom was murdered when I was young, so I got a lot of attention growing up. I've always gotten a lot of attention. I've always, just kind of been well paid attention to as a child. And so I think the trauma of that is I always need to be the center of attention. I always want to be this. I always mosquito. I always, everything got to be about me. And I think I've worked so hard to prove that narrative wrong to the point where nobody even says it, but it lives in my head. And sometimes when I do feel it, I take it to the extreme. You know what I'm saying? So the people that love you, this mosquito trying to get me. The people that love you is going to love you regardless, and they want you to be your best self. And so you just got to realize that. And Tina talked about that in the book, about how she had that conversation with her daughters, and they always like, duh, we've been wanting you to live your life. We've been wanting you to do good for yourself or whatever. Focus on you. And she was nervous. She was nervous because she was thinking they would be like, how selfish of you. But in fact, they've been wanting her to live her best life. You know what I mean? And it's interesting because this kind of last part of the book, you could tell the book was over, and she kind of added this last part because I guess when she finished the book, she had, as she was finishing the book, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. And she talked about how, she was supposed to get a checkup, and then COVID hit, and she didn't keep up with her checkups and all this other stuff or whatever. She ended up being diagnosed, and I think what stuck out the most is she talked about how Beyonce got a private doctor, a specialist for her, and she had also been talking to like the doctors at whatever hospital, and it was up to her. After she had got that second opinion with the specialist that Beyonce had gotten her, she had, 2 treatments, 2 routes that she could take, and it was just up for her to decide. So she talked about how when she spoke with the doctor at the hospital or whatever, how she had questions, and, the doctors were condescending. They kind of didn't validate her feelings, and it kind of reminded her of an experience she had back when she was a teenager, when a doctor actually broke her hymen. She was a virgin. A doctor broke her hymen, assuming that another situation had happened or whatever. And so she had felt invalidated by doctors when she was a kid. And so she talked about how this scenario, dealing with the breast cancer treatments, that the doctors just weren't listening. They didn't want to answer her questions. And I thought about how such a big deal with in this country of how black women are not listened to, they're not supported, and they're not taken serious in the medical field. It is a proven fact that the mortality rate for black mothers is far more higher than with other races. Everybody got a C-section, everybody getting C-sections now, regardless of what they want. The doctors is making them get these C-sections. And I just think if Beyonce, one of the biggest stars in the world, her own mother is not even being respected, and when she goes to the doctors or when she's in a hospital, what's happening with so many other black women when they go to the hospital? And so I think it's something that we really need to do something about. We really need to make changes about, because our black queens suffering when they go to the doctors, or the doctors not believing them, or the doctors assuming that they're not in as much pain as they say they in it. I think that was probably something that transcended the whole idea of the whole premise of the book. I think that one story kind of transcended everything else, because it just talked about how that's such how much of an epidemic. Well, they didn't talk about how much of an epidemic it is, but it humanized her and illuminated something that so many black women deal with on a regular. Just regular black women, not Beyonce's mom. I just thought that was crazy. Like, damn, Beyonce mom don't even get respect at the doctors. So of course, regular black women, or not nobody's regular, but you know what I'm saying, are not getting respected, you know, are not getting listened to, or getting challenged, or not getting their questions answered, you know what I'm saying? And that's not cool. That's not cool. But that was my review. Of course, it was a lot of different things in the book. I didn't want to spoil everything, but, you know, the stories about Johnny, her stories about, you know, growing up when she met Tina Turner and all those different things. Like, it's a cool, interesting book. Badass Teeny B. I think it was a cool book. Y'all should check it out. Y'all should read it. It's not just a book for women. It's not just a book for, you know, older or middle-aged black women. Like, it's a cool book. Like, it's a cool book. I think Tina Knowles is a phenomenal businesswoman. She's a phenomenal mother. You know, it's hard to come by a mom like Tina Knowles, you know what I'm saying? And also, she's so much like so many of our mothers in terms of her mothering people that aren't her kids. You know, she talked about Angie Beyonce, her niece. She talked about Ty Hunter. She talked about the little young Latin boy that she was her intern for Headliners, and then when she trained him up to a certain point, she actually gifted the shop to him, like gave the whole shop to him, gave him the keys and just gifted him the shop. Like, you know, another thing I wanted to talk about is Kelly. I think Tina talked a lot about how Kelly had like this slight need to want to please people, but also was just super sweet and loyal. And I think it goes to show you how cool that relationship is between her and Beyonce and Michelle. Like, Kelly is such a intricate part of the group because she just kind of gonna play whatever part she gotta play, and she really loves to make people feel good. And I think she kind of evolved out of the people pleasing stage and is like, you know, kind of tempered that now. But I think when you think about why Destiny's Child still is a group for real, because they still friends, they still sing together, I think that part of it is an integral part. Like, Kelly is her in her own right, Michelle is her in her own right, and they talk about Michelle in the book too. So I ain't talk about everything, but that's my crazy random hopping all over the place review of Tina Knowles' Matriarch. And bro, I got mosquito bumps all over my arm, bro. This was like a review with me and mosquitoes. Like, me and the mosquitoes reviewed the damn book. But yeah, I'm going in. Thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of Manifesting Stardom. I'm trying to get back. But y'all, check out Tina Knowles' book, Matriarch. Shout out to Ms. Tina if you see this. Great job, Ms. Tina. Great job.